Wrestling fans, I'm Dan Mirade.
I'm Matt Degnan.
We're here with another special edition of Wrestling Insiders with all the news, views, results, opinions you can handle. Stand by.
This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there live.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, welcome to a special late night Thursday edition of Wrestling Insiders. I'm Dan Mirade, joined by the man that represents Southwestern Connecticut better than anyone I know, Mr. Matt Degnan. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again. I'm ready to talk some AEW and NXT tonight.
Well, we were a little behind this week. We ran into a couple technical glitches, so our Raw program wound up being available on Wednesday night instead of Tuesday night. We're going to try and do much better than that, obviously. Tonight we have the recap of NXT and AEW from September what was the date yesterday? I don't even remember. I'm so lost. I believe yesterday was September the 16th, 2020.
Yeah, the 16th.
It was a hectic day in the world of PlayStation 5 pre-ordering. Baby Marty is not a happy camper, and he's been stomping a mud hole dry in the cell phone as we continue to try and track them down. But tonight, if you missed it before this special edition of the program, we have another installment of Party with Marty. Marty Jannetty breaks down his no-holds-barred sex, drugs, and rock and roll look at 1980s and 1990s professional wrestling. This week he talks a little WWF 1988, when the Rockers came back to WWF full-time, working with the Conquistadors. Randy Savage is the world champion with Elizabeth at his side. Early issues the Rockers had with Andre the Giant. The Von Erich family tragedies, even though Kerry Von Erich really wasn't associated with WWF at that point. But it's a very interesting episode. If you did not see it, and if you didn't, you can catch up on it in the archives. It's available every Thursday night, a brand new episode at 9 p.m. Did I get the quick, cheap plug in?
The quick one has, I believe this one is going to air after Marty's tonight, but they can go back and listen.
Well, that's exactly it. If they missed the premiere, now after they listen to our great insight into the world of NXT and AEW, they can listen to what Mr. Jannetty has to say. So how do we kick off first this week? NXT or AEW? I leave it at your discretion, sir.
I put AEW first. I don't know. It was just what I typed first on my sheet.
All right. I was told, someone I'm not going to say who, had listened to one of the episodes we had done about AEW, and they said, you know what? You were far too easy on AEW. And I almost took that as a challenge. So last night as I watched it, I watched the replay of it, and I took meticulous notes, as I'll call them. I know Cecil the Lion is over in the corner of the studio taking notes of his own, but let's see what we have to say about AEW. Kick it off.
All right, well, the opening match, FTR defeated Jurassic Express.
Correct.
What did you think? I'm sure you're going to have tons of notes. I usually kind of just remember. I didn't watch it live last night. I usually DVR both shows. So I watched it after NXT. I thought it was a pretty good show overall. I liked this opening match. And a lot of people on Twitter and other social medias have stated the same, that the opening tag match was one of the better ones in AEW.
Well, before we get to the match, maybe I'll just run through a few of my quick little notes that I took. Of the 4 regular weekly wrestling shows I see, which are the 3 WWE presentations in AEW, I think one thing that AEW should get credit for is I think they have the best intro package of all of the shows. I think it feels different than all of the WWE presentations. I like the music a little more. I think it has a little bit more of a different color variety to it. WWE's productions, as always, they're first class, they're state of the art, but they can feel the same a lot of the time. And before we get to the opening match, I also want to state that coming out of the show, another thing I took was I think AEW, again, has by far the best commentary team in the business right now. I'd take Taz over Excalibur any day of the week. I think the mask takes away credibility from Excalibur, and he almost like Mauro Ranallo gets a little overexcited too often. But Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone are fantastic together. As far as the match goes, I kind of rolled the eyes at the Young Bucks coming out, super kicking the ref for some reason, tossing $10,000 to Tony Khan at the gorilla position. But as far as the match itself goes, I like that FTR and Tully Blanchard, they had their matching jackets. It kind of reminded me of the Brain Busters from 1988, which was Tully on Anderson and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Jungle Boy, I think he has the ability to be maybe a modern-day 1-2-3 kid. The problem is you can't sell too big for a guy of his size, or it takes away, again, credibility. I think FTR, maybe they made him look a little bit too big as to what his actual stature is. I hate the boy part of Jungle Boy's name. I wish, I believe his real name, Jack Perry. I know he's not Luke.
Yeah.
Maybe Jungle Jack Perry or something like that. I don't like the boy. I thought it was a really great heel finish. I thought there was some great transitional tag team moves in it. Not the world's biggest Luchasaurus fan. Maybe he needs to go back to Jurassic Park, but when FTR was in there with Jungle Boy, I thought it was a really solid tag team match. I enjoyed it.
My favorite, I like Luchasaurus the best out of that group.
Why do you like Luchasaurus?
He's a big guy who can do a lot. He's very versatile.
Really? I know he's a big guy, but you lose me at that point.
Well, I said it before, I don't like his gimmick, but I think what he can do in the ring is very good for a man of his size.
Maybe back in the Stone Ages. I don't know. As far as seeing him week to week on AEW now, he's kind of a shoulder shrug to me. I'm especially not a fan of Mako's stunt. That stunt.
I think it has to do with his gimmick, though. Someone being called Luchasaurus.
Yeah.
I think if he was presented in a serious way and not paired with two midgets, I think, he'd be a little bit higher up the card,
there's nothing that really stands out about him as bad, but there's nothing about him that really interests me. And the other one, the manager they have, Mako's stunt, again, I think that stunt is passé. I would move on from that. But I think there's a lot of potential in Jack Perry. I'd like to see Jack Perry maybe put on 20 to 30 pounds and maybe look more like a legitimate athlete, maybe a little bit more of a physical threat. But he has all the tools, I think, to become a solid, if nothing less, a very solid cruiserweight player in professional wrestling for a couple of decades to come, and that's quite the compliment. FTR is always very solid. I just think maybe they sold a little bit too much for the very slight Jungle Boy, in one man's opinion.
I think Jungle Boy should add some weight on as well. He just doesn't, as we've said before, doesn't look the part.
Yeah.
So if he adds a little weight, he has all the athleticism and all the in-ring work. It's just the look of him doesn't really do much.
Right.
But when you start watching his matches, he could do more than what you think he'd be able to. When you look at Luchasaurus, he's the type of guy you look at, he's big, but he can wrestle like Jungle Boy. So
I guess I've missed those matches with Luchasaurus, but the effort is always there. I'll give him that. I've never looked at Luchasaurus as a lazy man.
Well, I love FTR. I think they're a great tag team. I like Tully with them. But, again, as you said, stealing my notes or things I remembered is I'm selling too much for Jungle Boy. But
you thought they sold too much for Jungle Boy?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's, especially as the tag team champions, you don't want them looking, even though they won with some heel tactics, but still you don't want them, It's like with Dominic Mysterio.
You can't overdo it for Dominic either. I see what you're saying. Although even Dominic, I think, has got a little bit more meat on the bones than the Jungle Boy at this point.
Well, he's got meat, but not good meat.
All right. Well, you know more about that meat than I do, I guess.
No, I'm just saying, well, you can have meat, but is it muscle or is it fat? That's the thing.
Considering how well covered up he is, I'm going to guess that it isn't the most muscular tone on Dominic.
That's
Usually, if you got it, you want to show it off, baby. You don't want to hide it under a top.
That's what I'm saying. Is it good meat, like muscle, or is it just fat?
I think it's just mass. We'll be politically correct. We'll say mass.
It's like Eddie Kingston. He looks like, he just came back from KFC getting some chicken wings.
Yeah, like Tony up in Auburn, Maine.
And then the next match was Hangman Adam Page defeating Frankie Kazarian. What are your thoughts on that? I'll let you read your notes first.
I thought it was a good match. Simply two professionals is what I put down in the notes. I think Adam Page made the right choice going with AEW over turning down a pretty lucrative offer from WWE, from what I was told by friends in Connecticut. He gets to cultivate his own identity in AEW. I don't understand how a company like Ring of Honor that is so bland missed the boat on him when the roster they have is so flat. Adam Page, he wouldn't even been put in the Bullet Club if it wasn't for New Japan being behind it so much. I think Kenny Omega stating on commentary that he's going back to singles as well is a good thing. I think that's best for both of them. I think putting them in the tag team shuffle for a long period of time would take away from it. I hate the drinking part of Adam Page's gimmick. It's pointless. It comes across as, minor league Steve Austin. But as far as his in-ring goes, he's fantastic. He's only getting better, and putting him in there with someone like Frankie Kazarian that was trained just 2 or 3 miles from here at Killer Kowalski School of Professional Wrestling. I thought it was a very good singles match. It got the job done, which was to make Adam Page even stronger as a singles babyface.
Hangman Adam Page, he's still got a lot of time in his career as well and ahead of him. So he could be one of the bigger stars, not even just in AEW, but in, pro wrestling for the future. So I think even he could go from AEW to WWE because he still has that much time in his career.
Sure. I don't think he's pigeonholed into AEW the rest of his career.
That's a good thing. And then Frankie Kazarian's the opposite. He's got more behind him than he does ahead.
Frankie's closer to the end than the beginning, but you know what? Whatever he had done to the moss on the top of the head, he's looking good. A little thin up there. I'm sure he had some kind of a little gimmick done, and it was money well spent. It made him look a little younger, and it's a youth-orientated business at the end of the day.
You think it's a piece like our other friend?
No, he doesn't have the JC Senior going up there, but I think there's a lot of different medical procedures that can be done. I know someone in WWE, one of their top-tier talents, had it done not too long ago, and it was it was helpful for them as well. So hopefully it makes Frankie look a little younger for a few more years. As Frankie's getting, I believe he's older than me, so he's getting a little long in the tooth.
Was Braun Strowman the one that got the work?
No, considering Braun shaved his head, no, it would not be Braun. Giuseppe Scoops over there. But one thing you failed to note, before that singles match, we had yet another mystery attack go down when Matt Hardy was taken down by quote-unquote someone as he was giving strategy to the private party.
I just put the
matches.
I don't put the other. Well, we all know who attacked Matt Hardy the way Chris Jericho was talking to him.
Well, hopefully Matt will get a little chance to recover from his concussion or non-concussion from the pay-per-view, and it was a trip well taken, I guess, from the Hardy compound in North Carolina down to Florida to lay on the floor.
Hopefully his wife stays far away still and shuts her mouth. And then the next match, MJF defeated, I didn't get the name, I just put Jobber. Then he cut a promo saying he may or may not join a group. I don't know why you have to cut a promo like that and why you have to announce you may or may not join a group. I just think it really didn't make sense. But would you like to see MJF in a group? I don't think he needs to. I think I think him and Wardlow is perfect with Wardlow, the muscle, and then MJF doing more of the talking. I think it would take away from MJF and Wardlow. They did join a group.
I'm a big fan of factions. I think AEW has enough factions right now. I thought that it was overbooking when they had all of these quote-unquote political people joined at the hip with MJF leading into the last pay-per-view. I thought it watered him down when he didn't need to be watered down. He stands out enough on his own. My one drawback with MJF is that, I think he's, for someone at his range of experience, I think he's good in the ring. I think he's an excellent mouthpiece. It almost looks like it should be a flip of the coin, where MJF should be the guy that manages Wardlow. One man's opinion.
I think Wardlow should be presented more than just muscle, like wrestling more. I mean, I don't think he's had more than a handful of matches.
There could be a reason for that. I don't know. I mean, for all I know, he could be one of the worst things that has ever stepped into a ring, but until I see it, I really can't, give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'd like to see them give him a chance. I think anytime, especially in 2020, when you have a guy that's that big, you give him a chance to fail,
I mean, he did some jobber matches, but he hasn't really done anything concrete yet.
Right.
I mean, I know he's supposed to be the muscle for MJF, but I'd like, him built up a little more so he looks more of a threat instead of just kind of standing at ringside and then, taking the mic from Justin Roberts or something like that. But I like them as a duo. I don't really think one should be higher than the other. I think they should work more as a tandem.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, I do want to state, because I thought it was kind of unfair when we did the AEW pay-per-view watch-along, where we had so much fun with our friends that were chatting away, super chatting away, just talking wrestling from all corners of the globe. I think the length of that pay-per-view really took away from MJF's performance that night. Him and Moxley went all out in that main event, and I just think the night seemed to drag so long. I think it hurt the two of them when you look back at that pay-per-view. But MJF and Moxley really put forth a solid pay-per-view main event effort that night. And I think it's worth mentioning again for the fans maybe that didn't see it, or those that maybe were like us, didn't realize how long of a night it would be, and were just kind of had enough wrestling at that point by the time the main event went on. That was a shame.
When you have a long show like that and you get to the main event, people just want it to be over.
Right.
I mean, I remember us, we were sitting there and
Oh,
we were just ready to go to TGI Friday.
you better believe it,
But
baby. I'm ready
Go see
now.
our friend.
I'm ready now.
Go see our friend. What's his name? Mark?
Kevin.
Well,
Kevin with the hat.
That was my second guess.
Yeah.
But and then the next match, Chris Jericho and Jake Hager defeated Private Party. I like that Hager is wrestling. I mean, I think he's a good wrestler, but not something that's, a main event type of guy. I think here and there he could be spotlighted. And instead of just doing all these tag team and 6-man tag team matches, I think he's got, more potential than that, even though he's been in the business for a while now. I don't like him hanging around with Jericho in the Inner Circle that much, another faction. They have about a dozen of them in AEW, and they're teasing making more, which I think is idiotic. But I do like Private Party. Again, relatable to Hangman Adam Page. They have a lot of their career left, so they can take losses like this to a couple veterans.
Well, I think when I look at that match, it was almost like they had all the puzzle pieces lined up. They just didn't know how to put the puzzle together. Jericho and Swagger, Jake Hager, top guys in the promotion. Jericho, the first world champion, borderline legend in the sport itself. And now for 2 weeks in a row, he's been going tit for tat, 50-50 offense with these mid and undercard guys. That match they had with Janela and Sonny Kiss, I couldn't believe how much the two of them sold for two undercard guys like that, especially Jake Hager, a big, badass MMA, legit athlete, selling for Sonny Kisses. I mean, abysmal-looking punches. It was embarrassing. This was a little bit better than that, but not too much. I mean, Private Party, I think, are great athletes. I think, as I've noted before on some of these AEW shows, they have a lot of talent right now that is green. They have not perfected the craft yet, but they have eons and boatloads of potential. I think Private Party is going to go down as one of the better tag teams of the next decade. Does that mean they're there right now? No, it does not. Does that mean Jericho and Swagger should be selling for them like they're in there with Austin and The Rock? No, they should not. I think it takes away from Jericho and Swagger's credibility, as I imagine they're being groomed for a pay-per-view title shot with whoever the champions may be at that time. Let's just say FTR. If they're only going 50-50 with Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss and going 50-50 with Private Party, from a storyline point of view, why would they have great luck against the champions? I don't know. I think they've been selling way too much for guys that they shouldn't be selling for. I mean, Roman's not going to get in there on WWE, for example, right now as their top heel and, make Titus O'Neil look like $1 million. Or someone like, I'm trying to think of someone who's gone now, Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder. They're not going to go in there and make them look like main event guys. At one point, I could not understand the logic behind it at all. Jericho, for some reason, just sat up on the middle rope for no reason. One of the private party guys ran at Swagger, Hager. Hager picked him up, tossed him in the air, so he could do some kind of a Hurricane runner off of Jericho. But why would Jericho just all of a sudden decide to sit up on the top rope with his legs on the middle rope? To me, when people sometimes knock AEW for being a stunt show or it being like a Cirque du Soleil, I can understand where they're coming from at a point like that, because that just defied professional wrestling logic right there. Why would a man want to put himself in that position? For no reason, by choice. It's not like the private party member picked him up and put him there. Jericho just went and sat himself, unless maybe the spot was forgotten and Jericho was just trying to cover for maybe what was a blown or a forgotten spot. I don't know. I wasn't one of the agents to put the match together. But to me, that defied a lot of logic. Not a bad match,
That's the
though.
thing that WWE does well, is they don't have guys selling for people that aren't ready yet or aren't as good, because, you know, it's not like WWE has people that are green or still need, you know, work in the business.
Right.
Almost everybody in WWE has been in the game for a little bit. So WWE usually doesn't run into problems like this, where you have veterans, you know, selling for people who have been in the business only a few years, or people who have been in the business but aren't really credible.
Right.
So WWE doesn't usually have that type of problem. But the thing with AEW is they're going to run into this type of stuff because they haven't even been around for a year yet. In a couple of weeks, it'll be a year. But that's why AEW needs to figure out that type of stuff of, you know, how to set up the match in terms of, it's a simple thing like that, just selling. And then in the next match.
But you know what, before we go there, can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where I was asked to really try and take notes and break down the show, there were two segments before that Jericho match that I did take note of. I wanted to note that I loved the Taz vignette where he put over his stable member, Ricky Starks. That felt like something you'd see on a professional sports presentation, breaking down his moves, the impact of the moves. Taz came across, again, as usual, as a total pro. He made a young newcomer to AEW like Ricky Starks look like $1 million, give him the rub he needs. I don't know if you paid attention. It was only a short, maybe 30-second to a minute vignette, but it was done to perfection. That was a WWE-like quality segment put together right there. The Taz and Ricky Starks vignette was A+ in my opinion. And then right before you went to the tag team match with Jericho and Hager against Private Party, you had that schmaz with Eddie Kingston and the Butcher and the Blade, just taking guys out of the crowd, tossing them into the ring. It was almost exactly like Lance Archer has been doing. It was needless. It was uninteresting. It was chaotic. I don't understand what they are trying to build in it, but it lost my interest completely. I don't know about you.
But that group just does not go together. He said, we're not a group or a faction. We're a family. Yeah. It's like Eddie Kingston just walks into AEW. The Lucha Brothers and Butcher and the Blade have nothing to do with each other. And all of a sudden they're a family, and they just take people out of the crowd and beat them up for no reason so they could feel happy about themselves. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It was like they were just trying to find a way to put everybody they could on the show, and that usually doesn't lead to a better show. I thought that took away from a good show at that point.
That segment felt like an indie show.
Yeah, it really did.
It's just throwing a bunch of guys in the ring, giving them a mic and just saying, beat the shit out of anybody you want. It didn't really make sense. But I like that Stark segment where he was breaking down his moves and what he does in the ring. I really like that. I think they should do more of that in AEW, even WWE, breaking down move sets, breaking down what's good, pros and cons type of stuff.
They don't do squash matches very often anymore, which traditionally, back in the quote-unquote good old days, that's what squash matches were for, which was to get over the stars' moves, their move sets, the impact, their finishes, and so on. And even though what the Ricky Starks segment was with Taz wasn't a match, it accomplished the same feat. So they did a very good job in a very short period of time. I applaud them for that. That was excellent. But then you compare it to the 5 to 10 minutes of garbage with the Eddie Kingston schmaz, and it's like one step forward, one step back.
Yeah, and then we can go back to the selling. Here's a match where they ran into a problem if they started shooting on each other. Thunder Rosa retained her NWA Women's title over Ivelisse. Diamante made the run-in on Rosa after the match, causing Hikaru Shida to get involved. They'll be facing each other next week, Shida and Rosa versus Diamante and Ivelisse. But during the match, if you watched it, Rosa and Ivelisse were getting into it for real, shooting on each other, really hitting each other and going at each other. It's been reported today that they really don't like each other backstage. This is the first time a non-AEW title was defended on any AEW show, I believe. I don't remember any other outside titles being defended on AEW.
It was a big one. I took some notes on this one where the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, is so undefined to absolutely millions of fans that have no idea what it is. They could have spent maybe a segment along the lines of the length of the Taz and Ricky Starks one to explain it. Then you had the other ones come out wearing these AEW medals. I had no idea what they meant. Again, they could have taken.
Well, that was the women's tag team tournament.
I figured it out eventually, but again, they could have taken 30 seconds, a minute, just to put together a little profile package to say these are the two winners of our prestigious YouTube Women's Tag Team Championship tournament, and these are the medals they're wearing. It almost looked like when the Iron Sheik would show up at autograph signings 10 years ago with his fake Olympic medals on. Kind of a shoulder shrug. Not the biggest thing in the world, but you know what? Why not try and give these relative newcomers as much credibility as possible? If they won this big tournament, why not showcase just a couple of highlights of them winning the tournament? You know, and the same thing with the NWA Women's Champion. Why not show a little Thunder Rosa footage?
That's what I was going to say. Is it's a non-AEW title. They could have done a package on Thunder Rosa and on Ivelisse and Diamante winning the tournament. They could have done so much more. The AEW promo packages are good, and then sometimes they don't even do them at all. But this is the case where they
can be really good, or there's none.
They should have done one here because it was needed. Because I was even sitting there, and I'm like, I didn't even know they won the tournament because I really didn't give a shit. I mean, who's going to go over to YouTube and watch a women's tag team tournament? Not me.
Not I.
But,
not I.
Not I.
But the match itself, you know, I didn't think it was a bad match. The match was fine, was my note. They've done the better job building up Thunder Rosa than they do a lot of the women on their own AEW roster, which is kind of funny.
It's two women that they're not even signed, and they're giving them a big, big spot. And then in the main event, the third tag team match of the night.
Well, before we get there, we missed kind of a big segment. If you want to go there for a minute, if you want to pause before we get to that main event.
It's setting up the 6-man tag, right?
Yes.
I have that later.
Why do you have that after the main event?
Because it's in the news and notes.
All right, then. You know what? We'll go with your order then.
Because I just do the results of the matches, and then in the news and notes, I have the announced matches or the things that they set up.
All right. I broke down the entire show in order, so we just did it a little different. We'll go with your notes. So rock and roll, baby.
Best Friends defeated Proud and Powerful in a backlot brawl or parking lot brawl, however you want to say it. I thought it was a pretty entertaining match or fight, however you want to say it. I liked it. I mean, you might have different views on it than I do, but from my perspective, I liked it as a main event on Dynamite.
If I knew nothing about the promotion and I was tuning in for the first time, I would have thought it was pretty good. But there's nothing about Best Friends that is street fight main event worthy. They've been presented as a joke since Dynamite began. Again, they tried very hard. They bled, which I like, which gave it credibility. It was violent. But when you treat a team like two idiots for a year, how seriously are you going to take it? Then you bring out a guy that was battling in a pay-per-view top match in pools of mimosas, which makes it even worse, ending with a minivan mom pulling up to drive these bloody, battered comedy acts away. The match, again, if you didn't know the background to it, it was kind of a good brawl. But if you're familiar with the characters that was involved, it was just kind of a lousy, weak attempt at comedy in what was a match that should have been built around heat and violence. I think if you didn't make these guys look like goons, you would have had that element of heat and violence to it. And I know they did try with the heat and violence again with the, there was some dangerous spots in there. There was some blood involved on there. They were working on concrete and I'm sure some kind of sugared glass, but no man went out of that match unscathed. I just think you could have done a better job building up the match if you didn't present best friends looking like weak fools. One man's opinion.
I think the match itself was very good, but I really don't like the guys that are in the match. I love Proud and Powerful.
Now, that's the former LAX, right?
Yes. Yeah,
I didn't know that was their name. Okay.
Okay. I like them. Best friends I can really do without, but that's just me, and I know you kind of mirror that. But I thought the match itself was good. For a main event of Dynamite, it's all right. I mean, nothing in the show was really main event worthy other than that. Maybe FTR and Jurassic Express, but I really didn't see anything that was main event worthy to end that show.
That's the funny thing to me. I didn't think it was a bad way to end the show. I just think it was the wrong players to do it with.
I mean, it was an okay way to end the show. I mean,
I like brawls. I like blood. I like violence. I just don't think it should be two guys that are presented as, pussy cupcakes.
And we'll get to the AEW news and notes section now.
I'm ready, baby.
AEW officially signed Will Hobbs to a contract.
Big signing.
AEW announced a late-night Dynamite for next Tuesday. It will include Brandy Rhodes versus Anna Jay.
Oh really? Brandy Rhodes?
Scorpio Sky versus Ben Carter.
I have
Matt
no
Sydal
idea who
versus-
Ben Carter is. Do you?
He won the Rumble last year. Matt Sydal versus Sean Spears. And Chris Jericho will be on commentary for that. This episode will air it'll be a 1-hour episode on Tuesday after Inside the NBA. There will still be a regular Dynamite next Wednesday as well. So as I said on the show, I believe it was last week about them having a 1-hour episode after NBA and then a regular episode the next night. It wasn't this week. It was next week. What do you think about them doing an extra hour? I think it's good to promote the show.
I like the idea. I like the idea of it until you ran down the first couple of matches. You kind of lost my interest at that point.
The idea is good, but the execution isn't as good. What I would have done is I would have probably put a title match on that.
I think with what they announced, they would have been better off announcing nothing at all. I just would have announced a special, original 1-hour episode of Dynamite featuring the hungry young athletes of All Elite Wrestling. When I hear the name Brandy Rhodes, I just imagine that remote control in my hand ready to hit click.
But I would have done a title match, or put on some good matches instead of this garbage. So when people see it, put your best athletes on there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you know what? You may get some fresh new fans that may be watching the NBA and just keep the TV on once the NBA postgame show is over to sample it for the first time. If the first thing they sample is going to be Brandy Rhodes, that could be the last thing they sample, almost akin to my complaints last year when the NFL was promoting Fox coming to SmackDown. And the top 4 stars they were promoting in the graphics were Roman, Kofi, Bayley, and Sasha Banks. Now, the age demographic that's generally watching an NFL football game, are they really going to want to go out of their way to see Bayley and Sasha Banks do their, middle school talent show-like version of Eddie Guerrero and Macho Man's moves? I don't think so. I know the friends that I used to watch wrestling with back in the 80s and during the Attitude Era would have no interest in something like that. So I think that advertising on Fox was a misboat, and I think, not to compare advertising on NFL football on Fox to a 1-hour post-NBA post-game show is the same thing, but I think.
But AEW, they do get shout-outs on the NBA shows on TNT. They get a good amount of them, which I think is good. And they also paid for a lot of advertising on other channels and other markets and stuff, which I think is good. But if you're going to put on a show after NBA, which a lot of people are probably going to be watching because we're deep into the playoffs now, and you're putting on these type of matches, Scorpio Sky against some jobber, a shitty women's match, and an all right men's match, which is a good mid-card match, But if you're going to showcase yourself after that and you're trying to grasp the viewers that don't usually watch, come on, put someone like Brian Cage, Lance Archer, some big guys who, look the part, not, these guys who weigh about 200 pounds each.
Even some squash matches with some of the more established guys, I think, would be more effective as far as getting their moves and their personalities over, as opposed to some also-rans. But one man's opinion. I'll say this in AEW's defense. This happened a lot with WCW when they were on TNT. When there were a lot of weeks, they had no idea what their exact schedule, what day of the week even they were going to be on, what time of the day they were going to be on, because they didn't know what they were going to be facing with the NBA schedule. So that can be kind of tough on them. I'll give AEW a little slack as far as that goes, where it's kind of unpredictable. But there's no law that says you can't have Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then in the next news piece, AJ Styles confirms he had contact with AEW last year when his WWE contract was coming to an end, obviously before he re-signed with the company. What do you think about AJ Styles talking with them? I know more wrestlers have obviously at least had some form of contact with AEW, touching base and stuff.
That's
what do you think about
commonplace in every form of sport and entertainment since any form of free agency began. That doesn't surprise me in the least. Back in the quote-unquote good old days, every time someone had the ability to talk to a different company, it's just seeing what money is out there for them to make.
But it's interesting. But as I was about to add, it's interesting him coming forward with it and being, kind of talking about it openly. Usually guys who go and talk to another company, they don't go out and say it themselves or confirm it.
He's re-signed. He's got nothing to worry about.
Yeah. And then announced for next Wednesday for Dynamite, Brody Lee versus Orange Cassidy for the TNT title.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. Thunder Rosa and Hikaru Shida versus Ivelisse and Diamante, as I said before. John Moxley, Darby Allin, and Will Hobbs versus Lance Archer, Brian Cage, and Ricky Starks.
That's good potential.
What do you think about that lineup for next week?
Yeah, I liked the beginning of that angle that they shot during Dynamite. I thought it was the most life that Lance Archer has shown since he debuted in AEW. I thought Jake the Snake was great. I thought involving Taz was great. I wrote down in my notes that the promo, it was an effective piece to try and build up interest in the match, and then they had to go overdo it with Moxley coming out through the random rooms that he seems to navigate, and the wrestlers wearing the COVID masks attacking him in the middle of the crowd. For some reason, Will Hobbs, I don't know where he came from, but he had a chair and he came running through the arena. Then Darby Allin all of a sudden was booked for the match, even though no one communicated with him, as he's hiding wherever skateboarders hide. I think what you had right there was the beginning of the segment was very good, and then you got about 2 or 3 weeks worth of material in 2.5 minutes. But again, as I've noted, I really like the Cage and Ricky Starks pairing. I just think everything came together too quick, if that makes any sense. I think that segment should have ended with Taz saying, okay, our guys are going to go with Archer. We want the title shot after you get the belt. Then next week, maybe do that Moxley angle where he comes out and he's attacked by Ricky Starks and Brian Cage. Then, as that segment comes to an end to the third week, Moxley says, all right, Darby Allin, I got Hobbs, I need you, I need a third guy. Then, if you're booking it long term, that's 3 weeks worth of material instead of one 10-minute segment. Does that make any sense?
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
That's the same thing I said, because Will Hobbs came out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden on the mic, he calls out Darby Allin. Darby Allin would be the last person I would pick if you're going against Cage and Archer, two of the biggest guys in the company in terms of size, and you're going to pick Darby Allin. It makes sense storyline-wise because of what they did to him in the Casino Battle Royale a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, from a storyline point of view, it made sense.
It makes sense storyline-wise, but if he was picking a third person, I get storyline-wise it makes sense, but, I wouldn't pick him. But I just don't get how Will Hobbs just comes out of the crowd with a chair and he's helping Dean Ambrose or John Moxley. I don't understand how he fits into the whole fold, but what are you going to do? We're not booking it. If we were, I'll tell you it'd be a lot better than, what it was. And then Another company that needs help with some booking and refreshing is NXT, as we're going to move into that now. If you have
and as we go there, I think right now would be the perfect time to take a brief time out, Mr. Degnan, Mr. Prodigy, give fans the chance to head on over to Patreon, where they can get early ad-free access to Wrestling Insiders, stream the Studio Shoot Interview DVD library while helping keep professional wrestling legends working, all for the price of a cup of coffee over at Starbucks, patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Of course, we have the great merchandise up on eBay. That also helps keep the legends working. We ship it right to your door. We have the tremendous WWE T-shirt bundle available right now. What a fundraiser that is. For the price of a T-shirt at the regular cost on WWEshop.com, we'll give you not just the T-shirt, but a mystery autograph photo, a WWE cup, and a shout-out on Tony Atlas's Wrestling Insider program. It's a hell of a deal, and again, you're helping keep wrestling legends that have largely been out of work the past 6+ months working by having them in the studio. We got a lot of great stuff going on, folks. Again, every Tuesday night at 9, it's Tony Atlas on Wrestling Insiders. Thursdays at 9, Marty Jannetty. Then you want to talk about a fabulous Friday. It might be the worst piece in professional wrestling, but after the Thunderdome explodes in Orlando at 10 p.m., the landing place is John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insiders. Fabulous Fridays. We'll be back to talk NXT after this brief time out. All right, wrestling fans, welcome back to this special edition late night Wrestling Insiders. We partied with Marty Jannetty. Now we're listening to the man with the socks from Southwestern Connecticut, the prodigy himself, Matt Degnan. We talked a little AEW from September the 16th. Now we move on to the gold and the black. We're not talking about the Millennium Wrestling Federation. They stole our gimmick from back in 2001. We're talking about WWE NXT from the USA Network, emanating also from sunny Florida at Full Sail University. What happened this week, kid?
An opening match, Io Shirai defeated Shotzi Blackheart.
That was a big one.
I thought it was actually a pretty good match. I don't know if I'd open with the women, but I thought for a women's match it was pretty good.
I thought it held my interest.
Oh, wow. That's a first for the woman, I believe.
I didn't think the women's match on AEW was bad at all either. So
Whoa. Breaking news.
I don't dislike a solid women's match. I just don't want to be barraged with them for hours, along with Beth Phoenix's voice.
Down, I all right. Fell.
And wearing socks.
No, I'm actually not wearing socks right now.
Oh, well, they're naked. All right. Well, we don't want to get the foot lovers of the world too excited, so we'll continue. Please.
Tommaso Ciampa defeated Desmond Troy.
Tommaso, former Millennium Wrestling Federation television champion, one of my favorites. I hope his neck is feeling well. He's one of my favorites to watch in the squared circle. And it was good to see him come away with the W, as he deserves. He's one of the elite talents in this industry in 2020.
What do you think of his new mask?
Maybe he can make some money off it in the gimmick department. That remains to be seen what the WWE merchandising folks have in store for Tommaso. Why not put together a little side cash so he can take his little Willow to Disney World more often? I'm all for that.
Well, speaking of someone who likes kids, Austin Theory was defeated by Kushida.
Good segue.
I didn't really expect Austin Theory to lose. And Kushida actually beat him in, I think, less than 5 minutes or something around there. And it was pretty quick, and he made him tap out. I'm happy to see Austin Theory lose. I really don't like him. He got moved to the main roster way too quick. And what people are going to forget is he actually had a match at WrestleMania this year at the Performance Center. I know it wasn't a regular WrestleMania, but still a kid who was, he was in Evolve not even a year ago, and he had a WrestleMania match, in 2020, which I thought was pretty shocking. But I like Kushida. He's a good wrestler, someone else who's been kind of underutilized. What did you think of that match?
I happen to like both guys. I think Kushida is excellent. I think Austin Theory has a great amount of potential. I don't know how much reality was based in the internet accusations thrown his way. I know that he was taken down the totem pole, certainly back from the main roster to NXT as a result of it. You can only hope he learns from these negatives and moves on. I think he's someone that could be groomed as a top-tier talent. I think the potential is there. Whether that potential is ever met remains to be seen. Kushida is what he is. I think he's excellent for what he is in 2020. I thought that was the right move to make.
All right, well, glad you like that. You're actually liking NXT so far. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
And then moving to their first tag team match of the night was actually for the NXT tag team titles. Breezango retained their titles against Imperium. Imperium, I love as a tag team. Breezango, I really don't care for. I think they're good wrestlers, don't get me wrong, but the whole fashion police and looking a little bit exotic, I don't particularly care for it.
It's the same problem you had when we were talking about Best Friends. They presented them as idiots, and once they're presented as idiots, you take away the ability to present them as anything serious, anything where you can put into these scenarios of true grudge matches and violence. I think Tyler Breeze is one of the most underrated guys in the business. I think that highly of him. I think Breezango is a solid mid-card talent. I think they're a very good tag team together, but just it's too much stupidity. You can't make people look like fools and then turn around and expect to be able to do something of substance with them. I'm happy that they put Tyler Breeze back on NXT to get him away from just being a complete undercard enhancement talent on one of the two main rosters. And you know what? It seems like they're doing all right for themselves. They're having a little run with the tag belts. Maybe let some of the fans forget about the comedy stupidity that happened with them on the main rosters and someday get them back there. Although I'd like to see Breeze as a singles. I really am high on him.
He's a good wrestler. I like him. I think they just need to tweak his presentation a little bit, and he can work his way back up the ladder. Moving into another tag team match, but over to the women's side, Kaden Carter and Casey Catanzaro defeated Xia Li and Jessie Camia.
It was remote control. It was remote control time at that point.
I'll move away from that one. And then another tag team match, Killian Dane and Drake, even though it wasn't really too much of a tag team match, it was more of a 2-on-1 handicap match. But technically it was Killian Dane and Drake Maverick defeating Bobby Fish and Roderick Strong via DQ, or disqualification if you need clarification of that.
Thank you. I did. I needed the clarification on that one. After watching
some people don't know what DQ means. They might think Dairy Queen.
They might. And you know what? Maybe I'm thinking about having one of my nice Oreo Blizzards at DQ right now. I love those.
See? After Strong used a chair, what did you think of that one of Killian Dane doing the run-in after he pulled a Roman Reigns?
I just, anything that involves Drake Maverick loses my interest. It's just like what we said about Breezango and Best Friends, only about 10 times worse. He's just always been presented as a little idiot. It's hard to take anything he does as anything serious, whether it be as the GM of 205 Live, the little manager of AOP that pissed himself on television. They just, once you bury someone that much, it takes a lot of digging to get them out of the ground, and they still got a lot of digging to go. It's almost like one of Cecil the Lion's horror movies that he's working on down here at the studio. I have no interest in Drake Maverick. All right, the main event.
Something I had interest in. Damien Priest retained the NXT North American title against Timothy Thatcher. I thought it was a pretty good main event. That got about 15 minutes. Which is good time for them. What did you think of the main event? I thought it was pretty good.
I'd call it fair. Nothing about either one of those guys really, nothing bad about either one of those guys, but there's nothing about them that really excites me and holds my attention at this point.
Well, Thatcher, so far, I've said before, I think he's getting thrown in way too quick. He hasn't really been established yet, and he's already fighting for titles. He hasn't really won anything. The only thing he has, I believe, is when he beat Matt Riddle. But other than that, he lost to Finn Balor at TakeOver. He just doesn't really have that much momentum, and he's going into these big matches with really no build or anything behind him.
I think maybe the most fair way to present it is there's a lot of room for growth for both of them. Both of them have a chance to be meaningful in whether it be NXT, Raw, or SmackDown. As far as the match itself in this 1 week, it wasn't anything exceptional to me. It didn't really hold my attention all that much. But you know what? I'm sure there'll be better nights ahead for both men.
Both of them, I think, are good. As I said before, Thatcher getting thrown into it. I think Priest, he's been shown off well. I don't think he's really been ruined or done anything bad or negative.
No,
I think
not
so
at all.
far he's been good. But good main event. Then they're going to be on next Wednesday. So again, next Monday, you're going to have AEW versus NXT. Yet again, going head to head.
Head to head, baby.
Head to head. As we move into our news and notes section, Wade Barrett has officially signed with WWE to be a full-time announcer on Wednesdays. The contract is for about a year. As we said before, both of us have said that Wade Barrett is a very good announcer. I think he presents the match as well and puts the guys over. I've said on numerous occasions to different people is that I think the best announcers, whether it be WWE, AEW, whatever company, I think the best announcers are the former wrestlers.
They give it credibility. Although I would not go as far as to say that with Beth Phoenix. She continues to make me want to change the channel, even during some of the best NXT matches. I hate to say it. She's a nice lady. I've interacted with her the year she won was given a Cauliflower Alley Club award out in Las Vegas. But just because someone's a great human being, maybe a solid in-ring performer, does not mean they're great behind the microphone. And I think she really takes away from the action in the ring, whether it's her natural talent and ability, or maybe it's the way WWE wants to produce her, the way she is presented on that television show. It makes me want to change the channel a lot of the times.
The way she comes off to me is kind of how Renee Young sounded last year. Kind of very robotic.
To me, Renee was leaps and bounds above Beth Phoenix. Beth Phoenix, to me, sounds like she's either reading very aggressively off of a sheet of paper or just going, ooh, and ah, and not much else. And that doesn't interest me. I want to watch.
I mean, they sound kind of similar. Just the way they come out, the oohs and ahs are kind of similar. But I mean,
Renee would ooh and ah. You're right. You're very right. There were a lot of oohs and sometimes some ahs, but nothing like Beth Phoenix's. Renee didn't make me want to change the channel when I was watching it. I cringe sometimes.
As I've said before, I listen to NXT on mute. I cannot listen to the commentary. With Wade Barrett there, it's a little more doable. But as long as Beth Phoenix, is there, I can't listen to it.
Her and Ronaldo together were terrible. And I know there's a lot of people that like Mauro Ronaldo on SmackDown, and I was one of them. But whenever he made that transition to NXT and he would do nothing but yell and scream for 2 hours, again, if everything on the show for 2 hours is worth yelling and screaming about, what do you do when you come across something exceptionally exciting? You have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
One man's opinion.
One man's opinion.
I wish Mauro well.
There will be a women's battle royal next Wednesday to determine who will face Io Shirai for the NXT women's title at NXT TakeOver on October 4th.
That'll be a big AEW quarter-hour win, I predict.
And then I think this is actually, I'm expecting it to be the main event next week. There will be a Gauntlet Eliminator match. The rules are 2 men start the match. Every 4 minutes, another competitor will enter. Only way to be eliminated is by pinfall or submission. The last man standing will face Finn Balor for the NXT title at NXT TakeOver on October 4th.
Which we'll be doing a live stream for.
Yes. I think that's a cool, I don't know if it's new or if they've done it before, but I don't think they've done it. But I think it's a fresh thing. I think it's pretty cool. Almost like a Royal Rumble, but the way you get eliminated is pinfall or submission. I think it's a good... you don't like it?
I say overbooked, and it's a poor man's elimination chamber, the way it's presented. I'd rather just see a straight gauntlet match where these guys go out there at random intervals, and whoever comes away with the pinfall advances into the match until there's one winner at the end. Doing it the way it's described now, where there can be multiple people in the match at any given time. It almost sounds like Elimination Chamber without the chamber, and I just kind of shrug my shoulders at that. It's certainly not the thought put into it as the scripts of Cecil the Lion's movies down here at the studio.
I think it's a new idea. I mean, they're calling it the Gauntlet Eliminator match.
It's not necessarily a good one, but it's a new one.
Which almost sounds like the Elimination Chamber match. So they're, keeping the Eliminator type of thing in there. But in my opinion, I think it's good. It's new, but it's a good new. That's the thing. It's not a bad new. In my opinion, I like it, but you may not. But
No,
that's
I don't.
life.
You know what? I'll say this. I'm open-minded until I actually see it. On paper as it is, it sounds like to me poor man's Elimination Chamber. It could be executed and be one of the better matches of 2020 for all we know. So I keep an open mind.
And then the viewership for last night, AEW got 886,000, and NXT only got 689,000. So they beat them by about 200,000. And that's not that great of a number for NXT, compared to what they've been doing. And AEW almost cracking 900,000 and still going head-to-head against NXT. That's pretty good.
Well,
and
it was an impressive night for AEW's A show to defeat WWE's C show by almost 200,000 people. It was.
And the thing is they almost doubled them in the demos as well. AEW was the third show, and NXT was the 31st show. But I think overall, I don't know. You don't agree with me, but I keep saying that NXT should move to Tuesdays. But I know how you feel on that, and I'm sure other people do, as we talked about it before. But that's just me. But I think, both shows were decent last night. Nothing horrible, nothing great. But
are we going to give them numbers like we did for Raw?
Like a ranking?
Yeah.
1 to 10?
Yeah.
Same thing as Raw. I'd say about a 5 or 6 each.
Really? I'd go a little higher on AEW this week because there were a couple of things I liked as much as there were things I didn't like. I'd go 6.5 on AEW.
AEW, I'd give a 6. NXT, I'd probably give a 5. Other than the opening match that was good and the main event for NXT, nothing else really piqued my interest. And AEW, they had just a lot of good storyline developing things last night that I liked. NXT really didn't do anything last night that, jumped off the screen at me.
Wasn't like one of Cecil's podcasts.
No,
definitely not. He's getting very angry as he looks at me right now as he's preparing to do his own production when we are done.
Can do the run-in.
He's going to do the run-in. All right, well, it was a very interesting week on Wednesday Night Professional Wrestling, Matt. Again, we have our marquee attractions each week. Tuesday at 9, Wrestling Insiders at Your House with Tony Atlas. A little earlier tonight, we had Marty Jannetty's Party with Marty, Wrestling Insiders. Each Thursday at 9, you can find that. And then beginning tomorrow night, right after SmackDown, baby, you talk about the Thunderdome. We're talking about a dome that has maybe the worst piece in professional wrestling, Mr. John Cena Sr., with Fabulous Fridays at 10 p.m., We're going to have our special edition podcast-style talk shows during the week where we discuss the news, notes, results, and opinions that make this industry so great. We got the daily clips coming at 10. What aren't we doing here in Boston Wrestling Sports other than presenting live events we can't present in this state right now?
As my mother texts me, I believe she's almost home.
Nancy's almost home. All right, well, that's good. So I guess it's time to close out the show.
Yeah, give it the go home.
All right, wrestling fans, for my non-sock-wearing friend in southwestern Connecticut, I'm Dan Mirade. Again, we've got the cheap plugs rolling across that screen. Do everything you can to help keep Wrestling Legends working, keep us on the air. You're a member of our extended family. Don't forget that. We don't just want you to be well. We want you to stay healthy. Join us in all the different ways you can, whether it be just a big thumbs up here on YouTube, a subscribe so you can keep up to date on all the shows, joining us on the Super Chat like some of our super friends always do to make sure there's a little food in the tummy. We got the great merch. We got the T-shirt bundles. We got the Patreon. We got it all, but more than anything, we have you. Until we speak again, folks, be well. Good night.